Oh, well, hello. I didn't know you got there. You snuck up on me. How you doing, YouTube? Shouldn't we be calling it MeTube rather than YouTube? I mean, it is me, Tube. Hope you've been well. I hope you had a nice Memorial Day. Um, and I came up with a novel little thing to talk about today. The fun thing about teaching and just playing in general and playing for years the same tune is that you find new stuff in things. And when you teach things and when anything becomes a discipline like jazz or whatever, you have rules. And sometimes the rules are oversimplifications. It's the exceptions to the rules that really make the art, as opposed to just a simple mechanical thing. And one of those examples is a song called Tune Up by Miles Davis. And it's a pretty simple song. A lot of people learn it when they're first learning for a couple reasons, but one is that it uses a lot of 2/5s. So again, when we're talking about 2/5-1s, we're talking about relationships of chords in a scale, and we're talking about intervals. So if we're, I'll put on my little overhead camera for a moment, but if we're talking about typically fourths and fifths. So E, A, D, up a fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, down a fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are fourths and fifths. So what would that look like? Well, typical chord pattern would be E minor 7, A7, D major 7. So E minor 7, A7, D major 7. That is a 2, 5, 1. And we use the Roman numbers, right? Because E is the second note in the D scale, A is the fifth note of the D scale, and D is the first note. And then this guy becomes the second note of the next scale, D minor 7, right? G7 and C major 7. D minor 7, G7, C major 7. So you have minor 7, dominant 7, major 7, right? And it kind of gets, and then the next set of chords just becomes the C minor 7, right? C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7. If I did it in root position, it would look like that. Right? And that's the main pattern that you have in Tune Up. If you can do that, you can play Tune Up, which is pretty cool. Now, the exception to that rule, the thing that you don't typically see in most tunes, is that when you finally get to the B flat, when you finally get to the right, this collapses here to E flat major 7. It kind of bypasses. It would be as if you played major 7 chords on every root. So it would be as if you played, E major 7, E major 7, A major 7, D major 7, G major 7, C major 7, F major 7, B flat major 7, E flat major 7. Isn't that an interesting sound? It's an interesting sound. So you would D da E flat, D flat. It's a nice exercise, right? Isn't that interesting? So that's what happens in this tune. And then when it gets to the E flat, it sneaks back up chromatically. Typically, harmonies just move in fourths and fifths, okay? Or they move by step. In this instance, they move by half step. So it goes back up to the E. And then it does something very unusual. It does this. B flat major 7. And yet it works somehow. Isn't that interesting? Instead of, typically we'd want to hear, in this instance it goes, Now, why does it work? It works because, look at the notes in the chord. B flat major 7 is on the bottom. It does this is the exception I'm talking about. E minor 7, A7, B flat major 7, all right? That's unusual, right? Why does it work? Because look at the notes in the B flat major 7 chord, and I'll write it in bass clef. B flat, D, F, A, right? That's B flat, D, F, A. Right? Those are the notes. Why don't I, maybe, would it be clear if I wrote them on the line? I don't know if that's unclear, but anyway, right? Look at the top part of the chord. If I add one more note, all right, what chord is that? Well, that's B flat major 7 with an added ninth, right? That would be the ninth. Root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th. Root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th. Right, skipping notes, all skips, line, 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 line. If I get rid of the B flat, what do I get? I get D minor 7. That is B flat major 7 shares its notes with D minor 7. It shares 3 of those notes. And usually we'd expect it to go to major 7. In this instance, it just goes immediately to minor 7. So rather than going 2, 5, 1, it goes 2, 5, 2, 5, 2, 5, 1. That's another option, right? You can take that 2, 5, 1, E minor 7, A7, D major 7, and you can just lop out that major 7 chord and go right to the minor 7, G7, right? That's a possibility as well. You're still going up a 4th, down a 5th, right? So the complete pattern would be minor, dominant, major, minor, dominant, major, minor, dominant, major, minor, dominant, major. Right? But you could go minor, dominant, minor, dominant, minor, dominant, minor, dominant, minor, dominant, right? Until you land on a major, let's say. Or you could just go major, 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 major. That's the wrong chord. But now that voicing doesn't sound like a major 7 chord, especially down this low in the piano. But it is, nevertheless. That sounds a little more like a major. This is the major 7 chord in second inversion. Or playing root position. Major, 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 major. Isn't that interesting? It's still, all 3 of those patterns have something in common, right? It's the root movement. They all have the same root movement in common. E, A, D, G. That's why you got to know 4ths and 5ths. C, okay, F, right? And depending on which way you're going, right? E up to A, that's your 4th, and A. How about let's do it like this? Let's do it like this. Let's make our own nomenclature. Going up and going down, and going up and going down and going up. So up a 4th, down a 5th, and up a 4th, and down a 5th, right? And up a 4th, let's say, right? E, A, D, G, C, F, and then we eventually get to B flat, let's say, right? Down a 5th. Right? Minor, dominant, major, right? Or minor, dominant, or let's just go major, 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 major. Same idea, right? But anyway, Miles Davis goes E minor 7, A7, and then I'll play A7 down here, and then B flat major 7, up a half step. Now, what's interesting, the other interesting thing about the relationship of B flat to E, what's the interesting relationship? It is a tritone. It is the, right, dead set in the middle of the octave. So E is in the middle of the B flat octave, and B flat is in the middle of the E octave. Now I'm using terms like E and B flat, which is not precisely accurate, but 3 whole steps. And you know, that's kind of the magical relationship. You can substitute, right? You can substitute one chord for another chord, a tritone away. Typically, the way we think of it is we always think of it in terms of dominant chords. So usually you would think let's say A7, the logical substitute would be, it would be E flat 7, right? Or the logical substitute for E7 would be B flat 7. So typically you think of A7, you'd substitute this, E flat 7. E flat 7, A7, D. Right, that's instead of the 2-5-1, right? E minor 7, E flat 7, D major 7, D7, D flat 7, C major 7, C minor 7, B7, B flat major 7, right? The B flat 7, or the B7 rather, that's a substitute for the E flat. So you could have so it doesn't really matter. In other words, it doesn't really matter so much what chord you're playing as much as the quality of the chord, right? E minor 7, A7, that you could substitute E flat 7 right there, and then D major 7, right? That would be your 2-5-1. Instead of, right? So you're moving down by half steps, dee da da dee da 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 da. That's the other way you do it, right? The root movement would facilitate the cadence, right? I'm getting a little bit far afield here, but Miles Davis does. And then finally he does, and then he goes back, right? So let me play the tune for you a bit. Da, da, dee, da, da. E minor 7, A7. Now A7's an oversimplification because the melody note has a lot to do with the chord, really. That's the thing about reading fake books. You know, they're generalizations, they're fine, but you want to get into the weeds a little bit more, you know. So E minor 7 there's no A in an E minor 7 typically. That's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's the 4th of the 11th, right? So it's E minor 7 with an added 11. It's really an 11 chord. And I like to voice them very often. I'll voice them like this. How do I think of that? Well, one way to think of it is B minor 7, and then E is in the bass, okay? And the 3rd of the chord is G. Now D is the 5th. Typically D would be, the 5th would be superfluous. I might even get rid of it, right? But there's the 7th, 9th, 11th. I personally like the 5th there though, because I feel makes it a little warmer. And it goes down to this. Now listen, that note. There's no, in the music they write it as E flat. That's possible. But that's kind of a wrong note, right? And then we're back up to the, right? So A7, the E flat would be the flat 5. And then it resolves up, stepping up to the D major 7. Right. What else could you call that? You could call it A7 sharp 11. That's possible. They're the same note. You'd have to spell it like D sharp. In this case, you would spell it like E flat. And those are decisions that, require a little bit of thought. Then, same idea. 11th, D minor 11. Then, in the music, they spell it as C sharp. Well, C sharp is clearly not a flat 5, right? So it almost always would be considered G7 with the C sharp. That would be sharp 11. That would be, the Lydian sound. D major 7, starting on the 4th degree. The raised 4th. So, again, when you're looking at the sheet music, D minor 7 with the added 11th, G7 sharp 11, and then C major 7. This guy here, well, I would think of it as having A minor 7 over the D. And you probably want that F in there, D, F, A, C, E, G. Yeah, and notice we're not really using music here, right? We're using our ears, and you're just looking at my hands, and you can get the sheet music online. And the voicing I'm using these shell voicings. I'm taking the chord, the basic chord, C, E, G, B, right? And I'm just spreading it out on the piano. In this instance, the melody happens to be doubled, which is fine. And it goes on. C minor 7, right? C minor 7. Could play a little higher too. This looks like an E flat major chord. It's kind of an easy way to voice it. Yeah, there's slicker ways to do it, but what's wrong with this? F7, B flat major 7. So in this instance, we're going up the keyboard, D, 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 da, and then it goes to E flat major 7. That D, which was part of the B flat chord, it was the 3rd of the chord, now it becomes the 7th. Now, here back just like the beginning, E minor 7, A7, da, 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 da. That C there, that's written as C in the music. I would really write it as B sharp, frankly, because that's a sharp 9. A7 sharp 9. A7 sharp 9. And I would write that note as B sharp. I wouldn't write it as C flat. I would not write it as C flat in the music. I'm sorry, I would not write it as C natural. I wouldn't write it as C natural. That's the thing about musical notation that's confusing to me. So we had this A, then it becomes the major 7 of the B flat chord. But typically we would think of it going to D minor. Actually, what we really think of, usually if it was going to go D minor, we'd think of minor 7 flat 5. Remember, in a minor key, the 2 chord has a flatted 5. Right? In this instance, they don't do that. And then it goes to the A. So, and you hear this pattern, right? It's called sequence in music. Da da dee da da. Down a step, major 3rd, up a half step, up a step. And then they do the pattern again. Down a step, down a major 3rd, or depending on how you spell it, that could be a diminished 4th. Now, if we kept going, what would you do there? I mean, you'd have to do. You'd have to do Now that would be an interesting exercise, just to take that pattern and see if you can transpose it going on and on and on, you know, da da dee da 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 da. And if I was going to improvise that group of notes, dee 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 dee, you can even change the sequence. You know, you could go backwards. Let's say dee 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 dee, da 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 da. That's backwards. Dee da 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 da. Why does that work? Well, that's the ninth of E minor 9. That's the same note that we had before, going up to the G. D, and the D, the A becomes the fifth of the chord. So you can mix up the notes, mix up the order of the notes, da, da, dee, da, 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 or you could get rid of a note. Dee, dee, da, 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 dee, dee, da, dee, da, da, ba, da, ba, dee, da, da, da. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? Kind of getting rid of the first note. Dee, dee, da, dee, da, 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 da. Get rid of the first note. Dee, da, da, dee, da, da. Isn't that interesting? That's not the melody, but that would be a good improvisation. Da, 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 that's C. That's the sixth of the chord. So if you were to practice 2-5-1s, da, 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 going to that, see that little chord that I put in there? That would I'm just transposing that pattern. C minor, F7. Let's see, what did I do here before? See, to get a voicing, I have to remember my voicings. Right, minor 7 up here, right? B minor 7 up there, A minor 7 up here, G minor 7. Da, 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 that major third relationship. C minor 11, F7, G flat, F7, B flat. So I'm just inserting that. Let's give it a name. Let's call it a Miles chord, for lack of a better term. So that's a really interesting little tune that has a quirk in it, and it's why even as a beginning student, it looks like an easy tune to learn, but it can be a little confusing because it has this chord that you ordinarily wouldn't see. So let's play a little bit and kind of mess around with it. What do you say? Should we mess around with it a bit? Let's mess around with it a bit and just have some fun. See what I did there? Da 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 da. I went E7, flat 5, E flat. I went. Use that substitution. ask a simple question when you're playing this tune. What key is it in? Well, it's kind of, sort of in D, but that's sort of the magic of jazz. Like you never get this really definite sense that there's a tonic, because you're starting on the 2 chord already. You're kind of starting off balance. And when he throws that B flat chord in again, he's really kind of giving you, I suppose in music, the official name would be a deceptive cadence, right? So it's kind of throwing you off, so you don't get that. You get, and then it goes to the A, and then what chord would you end on? That's a simple answer, simple question to ask. What key is the piece in? You could end on the A7. You could end on the dominant. That would sort of sound interesting. Or you could end on the B flat, or I think that would be a little more appropriate. Whole tone question. The question chord. That's what they call the augmented chord. What? Yeah, the question chord. Well, I guess we're out of time today. Boy, that was fun. Thank you for being here today and sharing your time with me. Don't sneak up on me next time, okay? Okay. Anywho, this is Jonathan at the Piano Lesson. I'm very excited because I'm going to be headed up to Seattle this week to hear one of my heroes, Monty Alexander, up at Jazz Alley. And so I'm not going to be at Marco's Cafe as I normally would be, but I will be there the following week. So I'm just going to kind of swap dates. But kind of watch out for Monty's new record, because his birthday is D-Day, by the way, which is kind of interesting. You can look that up, the historical significance of D-Day, World War II. But he's going to be 80, so kind of celebrating his 80th birthday up in Seattle. And I'm also going to check out a great exhibit. Alexander Calder, the great American artist, up in Seattle too. So that'll be fun. I don't think I'm going to have time to go sailing as I normally do, but I'll have to go up another time to go sailing. But it might be a little cold anyway. So, all right, signing off. It's Jonathan at the Piano Lesson. Take care, and I'll see you next time.